And for our last honorable mention, we have Dragon Ball. And Dragon Ball, as in Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball Super, it's just the whole series. That's what I mean. I'll dissect this a little bit. Dragon Ball, very boring. Very, very boring, but you gotta watch it to watch the others. Gotta watch it. Dragon Ball Z, not boring, very good. Dragon Ball Z, that's a top 30 anime. Almost made the list, but now let's go to Dragon Ball Super. Ooh, yeah, animation's great. Yeah, you can tell they got that big giant budget behind them. That's all grand. That's all grand. I think Dragon Ball in general, I mean, the fights are great. The best fight in anime I've ever seen was in the Dragon Ball Super movie, the Broly movie, that came out a couple of years back. That's the best anime fight I've ever seen in my goddamn life. And Dragon Ball fights are amazing. It's all action, and that's fine. I love it. I love seeing the lights. I love seeing the beams. I love the screaming. I love that. But story-wise, like dialogue and storyline, this show is created by like an autistic 4th grader. The dialogue is awful. It's very plain and just not a fan. Storyline, I don't know. The objective is just to get stronger. That's it. But how antagonists and Goku, that whole chemistry thing works, is just Goku, oh, I have to overcome this bad guy, and now I have to fight this bad guy, and now I have to fight this even bigger bad guy, and now I go into outer space and I fight big bad Moon Man, and now I fight Guy from Mars, and oh, now I defeated him, so now I have to fight a even bigger, badder alien guy, and that's it. That's the show. Of all the shows, Dragon Ball, the first one, like from the 80s, that had the best storyline. But it had the worst action. Best action, Dragon Ball Super. But the storyline is tragic how horrible it is. Like, it's hard to believe an adult man wrote the dialogue for the show. It's very hard to believe that an adult man wrote the dialogue. I mean, it's so boring. But it's only an honorable mention. So I won't get too far into it. Let's get straight into the top 10 list with number 10. And now we're into the top 10. Love the top 10. Love it. This is getting the best of the best. So let's get right to number 10. Number 10 is Demon Slayer. Demon Slayer came out in the spring of 2019. The movie's coming out in October, and season 2 is coming out in the holiday time, I think. But why is Demon Slayer number 10 when it's only had one season? Season 1 was great, absolutely phenomenal. It's a shonen anime, and guess what? The protagonist is not the same repetitive protagonist in shonen. I really enjoy him. He's different. The characters around him, awesome. The visuals of the show are stunning. The fights are amazing. I feel the show is just going to get better. The antagonist, we've already met him. He's already has a awesome thing because you end up meeting him and you're like, oh man, he's this big bad guy, you know, he's gonna be evil and such. You meet him, he's with his wife and his daughter, and he's like buying them things. It looks like a family. Like when you first see the scene, you're like, oh, who's this character? You know, he's with his family having a fun night in like a downtown in like a small it was like a city, yeah, like a Japanese city. And then you find out he's the main antagonist. You're like, what? So the antagonist already has. I already love the antagonist. He also looks just like Michael Jackson. Like, look at this guy. Look at this guy. He looks phenomenal. Again, the fights in this series, because shonen is ultimately action adventure. So action is very important. Absolutely love. I love where the story's going. I love how they don't rush characters. They don't slow characters in development, like character development. It's not slowed down or fast-paced. It's good. But love this anime. And 10 is more of, this is where I think Demon Slayer will become. And I think it deserves 10. But it's more of, I think this is where Demon Slayer will be. But yeah, that's number 10, Demon Slayer. At number 9, we have Hajime no Ippo. This is the only sports anime I have in my list. Hajime no Ippo is a boxing anime, and I think it originally came out in the 90s, but I watched all the early 2000s. I forget. But it has had a total of 3 seasons. They have movies, but the movies are not canon, so I wouldn't watch the movies because I only like watching canon things. I don't like filler or non-realistic to the actual story plot stuff. I'm not into that. But Hajime no Ippo, oh my god, is it fantastic. Season 2, the soundtrack in Season 2, phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. Okay? Season 1 soundtrack, kind of a sleeper. Not really much of a soundtrack. Season 3, disappointing from Season 2. But Season 2, phenomenal soundtrack. Also, the story, absolutely insane. I love this show. It is a fantastic show. I feel like if you don't watch anime, like you can also get with the show. If that makes sense. Like if you don't watch anime and you like boxing, like if you just like boxing, I highly recommend watching this show. It's going to be animated, yes, but like the emotion and the storyline itself, it's very good. I wouldn't say it's like Rocky. He overcomes so much and he just wants to be strong. That's all he wants to be, is just strong. He doesn't want to win anything. He just wants to become strong. And that was where I fell in love with the show in Season 1, is that his concept, what he wanted to box, why he wanted to box. He just wants to feel strong. He wants to know what the meaning of strong is. He's not like, oh, I saw the heavyweight champion, I want to win that title. No, he just wants to be strong, and I love that. I love that. So, number 9, Hajime no Ippo. Number 8, we have Stray Dogs. Stray Dogs is the most popular underground anime right now. This show has 3 seasons. Season 4 is coming out next year. Super excited. I like Stray Dogs. I don't know what category it is. It's definitely action. I wouldn't say it's an adventure. It's action. I don't think it's a shonen. There's a lot of action involved. So in this world, only 30% of humans have some type of ability. And of the abilities, you can either, it's like half and half. There's no in between. So like, of the 30% of the humans that have abilities, half of them have a really garbage ability. Like it's really only used for one thing, doesn't do much, doesn't really help you in fights. You know, it's a pretty shitty power. It's kind of like, why do I even have an ability at all? You know, it doesn't do anything. And then there's half that are completely overpowered. Like there's a guy who can shift gravity. He can control gravity. He can even push gravity to side. Like some overpowered stuff. And it's very 50-50, but I like it. I fuck with it. Openings in the show, also phenomenal. Soundtrack, pretty solid. The fights, they're very underrated. I really like the fights. Really enjoy them. The story, I like the story because there are two protagonists. There's not one, there's two. You follow both of them. Very interesting concept. And you meet both of them in the first season. And you're this agency, or this you're not police department, but like this, you're detectives. And you meet this whole detective agency, and you see all their powers, and there's about 7 or 8 of these people. Season 2, the antagonists in Season 2, awesome. And at number 7, we have Do Ra 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 Ra. Okay, I'm gonna give you a disclaimer if you decide to watch this. Okay, Season 1 is a puzzle, and they never explain that it's a puzzle. Okay, you kind of have to figure it out on your own, but Season 1 is a puzzle. The Season 1 is confusing. None of the scenes sync up. Some of the scenes are in the past, in the future, in the present, and you don't know which one is which. You don't know a lot of characters that you meet. You meet characters, like I remember we saw a character in a scene, and you're like, oh, he's kind of with the protagonist now. And in episode 8, you meet him. So none of the scenes or episodes link up with each other. The story is about this kid. He moves to Japan. He's from like this farm town in Japan. So he moves to Tokyo, I should say. He moves to Tokyo to attend a high school. In this district, it has like a lot of crime, a lot of like mafia involved, and a lot of gangs, colored gangs. And there's a new gang, because all these color gangs, they all like are color coded. So like there's a gang that wears yellow, a gang that wears green. There's a gang that's called the Dollars, and they're in secret because they don't wear colors, and that's what makes them dangerous. So anyway, that's the plot of Season 1. You have this kid moving to Tokyo. He has a roommate, has friends, goes to school. You also meet these other characters, these information brokers, these other gang people. You meet other characters on the side. You meet an actor, an actress. You meet a lot of people in this one district. And again, Season 1 makes 0 sense. But now that I've given you the information that's a puzzle, now it becomes fun, because the last episode of Season 1 is so beautiful, because everything makes sense right when the episode starts. Everything links up, and at that whole episode, everything makes sense, and you're like, oh my god, that was fucking amazing. Season 2 and Season 3, they're not puzzles like Season 1, but Season 1 is like a pilot. The whole season is a pilot. Season 2 is really Season 1, Season 3 is really Season 2. And the puzzle, yeah, because they threw me for a fucking loop. Wow. Season 1, that's top 10 material. Season 1, that's top 10 fucking material. Season 2 and Season 3, it's not a puzzle, but it's fucking great, because now you know the story, you know what's going on. So now the story just goes forward, and it's like, oh, what goes on now? I don't want to spoil anything, because I don't want to spoil the magic that happens in Season 1. So if you like puzzles, if you like figuring that out, I really highly recommend watching this show. Number 6, might be controversial. I don't think so, because if you look at viewers and Rotten Tomatoes of anime, this is a top 10 anime. Number 6 for me is Fairy Tail. Boy, do I love Fairy Tail. Fairy Tail is a shonen anime with 3 seasons so far. And it's about wizards and witches and magic. Reason why I gravitate towards this anime is because I played a lot of Wizards 101 as a kid. Like a lot. Like a lot. So Season 1 is very laid back. I mean, there is action and adventure because it is a shonen, but it's not like serious. It's like a roller coaster ride. but like roller coasters are fun. But I really, really, really enjoy the show. I really enjoyed season 1. It's very laid back. It had that Wizards 101 effect, that nostalgia, and I just loved it. Season 1, nostalgia's there. Awesome. The fight scenes, pretty good. Pretty solid. Okay? Season 1, not quite top 10 anime. Doesn't make it. Season 2 gets more serious. There's a budget involved because season 1 was such successful. There's a tournament arc. The story propels forward and it's more serious. But still has the wizard nostalgia thing that I have with it. Really good. Again, has the roller coaster effect. It's more serious, but it's a roller coaster effect still. Season 3. Wow. This was the war arc. This was the final. And I should say this series has 2 antagonists. So kind of like Stray Dogs, but not protagonists, but antagonists. So it's very interesting. You meet both the antagonists, the main antagonists, in season 2. You don't meet them in season 1, because season 1's the roller coaster ride. You meet the 2 antagonists in season 2 when it's more serious, so then you can introduce the more serious characters. And then in season 3, it's the war arc. You have to fight both of them. It's absolutely amazing. Also too, season 3 is so serious and great because there are consequences, and when I mean consequences, I mean there are character deaths. Yep. Everybody you love might die. So, but I like how season 1 is very fun. Season 2 is like, ooh, it's fun, but all right, now we're getting a little deeper. And season 3 is all business, and I love it. The fighting in the show, amazing. Soundtrack, very good. Opening 1 of the show is awesome. Don't like any of the other openings. There's like, I don't know, 20 of them. Don't like any of them. So yeah, in the 3 seasons so far, there's about 300 episodes. And I love every episode of it. So I highly recommend watching Fairy Tail. Also, I've cried like 10 times in the show. There's some sad moments. Number 5, we have Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. I watched this. I was very late to the game. This show came out in 2010, and I watched this last spring. So 10 years after it came out. So I'm very late to the game. But I watched it. And it's number 5, so I fucking loved it. It's 1 season long. The story ends after season 1. There's no reason for a season 2. This show is a shonen. There are 2 protagonists. One kind of outshines more than the other, but the storyline's 2. And it's these 2 brothers, the Elric brothers. A lot of shows, if your powers or abilities have to use logic or not. And I think it's very important to figure out if you have logic or not, because there are shows that do no logic, like Dragon Ball or Fairy Tail. I mean, Fairy Tail, it's magic. So you can literally create anything you want out of thin air. You can literally create a fireball out of thin air. It all has to do with magic, so it's not logic. Now, I'm not saying one is not better than the other. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying a show, for a shonen to be successful, you have to choose one. Is the show going to be logical, or is it not going to be logical? Because you can get into a dilemma like One Piece, because One Piece does the it's not logic here, but in some cases we use logic, but in this one episode we're not going to use logic, and in this one fight we're going to use logic, but in the next fight we're not going to use logic at all. But next arc we're going to be using all logic, but in the following arc we're going to be using no logic at all. So that's what is another knock to One Piece, is because they don't pick one. But anyway, Full Metal Alchemist, they have one, and they went with logic. Everything has to do with alchemy and chemistry, and yeah, chemistry. How powers work is you have to replace the atoms and such, and it's a very scientific fact. And I'm not a very highly intelligent person, so I can't really rename a lot of the things, but they explain it in like the first and second episode. They explain how powers work. So if you want to watch the show, it's 1 season long, has 70 episodes. They'll explain in detail what happens, but basically, in order to create like a sword from the ground, you're not taking something. You're not creating a sword out of thin air. You have to replace whatever makes the sword from the ground. You have to replace it with something. Is what I'm trying to say. But again, they explain it to the T in the show, and you'll understand it because they can explain it better than I can. But the show is amazing. The antagonist, phenomenal. Protagonist, awesome. So I would, and it's only 1 season long, why not go watch it? It's really good. I'd go watch it. At number 4, we have 7 Deadly Sins. 7 Deadly Sins has a total of 3 seasons, and number 4 will be coming out next year. And season 4 will be the final season, so I am excited, but I'm also sad because I love this anime so fucking much. I couldn't tell you who the main protagonist is. I can name like 2, but like I can't really name one. It's very unclear who the main antagonist is. The show really just follows a group of people, the 7 Deadly Sins, and plus like 2 characters. So like if I was like 9 people, without spoiling things and getting into the show way too much, season 1 is great. It's a great start. It's a great starting point. It's very good, very great. There's a main antagonist who gets defeated, but it's great. It's super. Season 2, so good because of one character, Escanor. He's the sin of pride, the lion sin. He is one of the greatest characters of any anime. He is what makes the show top 5. And like the story and all the other characters combined and where it's heading and stuff kind of puts it to 4, but it would be number 5 if there's just a show called Escanor. Escanor would just be number 5. This guy makes the show. And season 1 was good. It was a great start. Great starting point. But now it's just it's just all Escanor now. Escanor he's the strongest of all the 7 Deadly Sins. All the 7 Deadly Sins have their own unique powers, such as Escanor can his power grows within the day, opposite of like a werewolf. So like when the sun comes up, he becomes very hulkishly strong. But when the sun's out and it's nighttime, he's like very flimsy. He's very weak. It's very cool power. Then there's Meliodas. He's the captain. He's the Sin of Wrath. He's like a demon prince who's like run away from hell. So he has like demon powers, very strong, very fast. Then you have Merlin. She is the sin of gluttony, the pig or warhog sin. She uses magic. Merlin, if you learn about like British mythology or Celtic mythology, or I don't know what you call that, like King Arthur and that, Merlin was like a right hand man to King Arthur, with like witches and stuff. But in this show, she's a girl. She's also like half demon, and she's immortal. She's really cool. Then you have King. He's the sin of Sloth, the bear. He's the bear sin. He's the king of fairies. He has like a spear thing. He can make it into other weapons or other types of things. He can control foresty stuff like greenery, trees, pollen, flowers. Yeah, he's got cool stuff. Then you got Diane. She's the giantess. She's the kin or the sin of envy, the sin of the serpent. She is like, basically, she's a giant. That's her whole thing. But she called giants in the show, they can earthbend. So she's like also like an earthbender. Probably the weakest character, weakest one out of them. She's still strong. She's still strong. Not saying, but like out of the group, she's probably the weakest. Oh, and then there's Bond. He's a fan favorite. And there's Bond. He's the sin of the fox. The sin, or yeah, the sin of greed. The fox sin. The sin of the fox. Bond. He is immortal. He drank from the fountain of youth, so he can never die, even if he is disintegrated. He's been disintegrated and then come back later in the show. He basically, his power has to do with, he has a power where he can steal anything, one item that he wants from somebody, and he can also steal your strength. So like if you guys are fighting, you're beating him up, you end up losing strength and you feel weak, and he ends up taking your strength. Now his strength has a cap, which I don't know why that is, because it makes him weaker. Like it could that power could be stronger if it didn't have like a cap, but there's like a certain amount that he can only take from somebody. And then you got Gother. He's the sin of the goat. Or lust. The sin of lust, which is the sin of the goat. Yeah, he's the greatest of all time. He is a puppet made from a demon, but he's very intelligent. He can like hijack your mind and control you, control your mind, control your actions and such and such. But those are all the sins? Yeah, those are all the sins. So yeah, all the sins, awesome. Antagonist, awesome. Side characters, amazing. King Arthur is actually in the show. He's like 15 or 16. He has a badass sword, Excalibur. Badass fucking sword. And next, we're in the top 3, okay? This is for that bronze medal, all right? These are the medalists at the Olympics. Number 3 is the most controversial pick on my list because oh wow, I see all the hate comments coming through. I see everybody clicking off my video when they hear this. But I will explain myself the best I can. Okay? Alright, so be with me. Alright? Be with me. For third place, that bronze medalist in my list is going to be High School DxD. No, wait. Before you leave, let me explain, okay? For those of you who have heard of High School DxD, which you probably heard because it is the most popular harem anime there is. It has, on different sites, it ranges from 78 to 89 Rotten Tomatoes, which is higher than any other harem anime ever. So, but you probably know of it because of that. But the thing is, you probably haven't watched the show because you just think it's going to be, well, it's just going to be a harem anime. What's the difference? Here's the difference. If you look in the description of the show and the genres, first thing that comes up is harem. The second is shonen. Now, that is interesting because there is no show that has harem and shonen put together. That's never happened before. So when you think about shonen and harem, you're like, oh, that's a tricky thing to use. Yes? That's very tricky. But the guy who wrote the show, he crafted it. He blended it perfectly. It works. It absolutely works. And I should say, okay, I'm like a regular guy, you know? I like harem anime. I do. That's why I watched it first. But the thing is, I kept watching it. And I realized that this was something completely different. And it is a shonen anime. There is a storyline to the show. Harem animes don't usually have a storyline. I mean, they do have a storyline, but like, you know what I'm talking about. Like, the protagonist, there's an objective. There are antagonists. There are... I mean, it's like watching a shonen. But it has harem elements. I would say the ratio of harem and shonen. It's very 50-50. I would say it's very 50-50. If there's one episode that's all harem, the next episode's all to the plot, all to the story, and it blends itself perfectly. The fights in the show are underrated. Okay, one of the fights in season 4. There's 4 seasons of these. Season 5's coming out this holiday. Season 4 has one fight. Top 10 fights I've ever seen in my fucking life. Top 10. These fights are underrated. Okay, soundtrack, not good. I'm not a super fan of the soundtrack. Openings, nah. But it's a story. Okay, the story of the show. All right, for my gamers out there, if you guys have played Smite, if you guys know what Smite is, it's basically like Smite. You have all of these mythologies, groups of these gods, because the show has to do with gods. So, and they're all kind of not fighting each other literally, but you have all of these gods and such beings from all these mythologies all intertwined in this world. So it's like, oh, there isn't one god. There's Son Goku from Chinese mythology. We meet Zeus and Hades. We meet Loki and Odin, and we'll meet Thor eventually. We meet Archangel Michael. We meet Lucifer. We meet all of these memorable characters or people you've heard of from these other mythologies, all intertwined in this world. And without spoiling anything, it's very fantastic. And the reason why it's number 3 is because I like harem, and I also love shonen, and it's also comedy. There's also comedy involved. All the 3 things I like, blended in perfectly. There's not one that outshines the other. And I think that is a task that is almost impossible to manage and almost to make perfect. But the guy who made the show, he fucking did it. He did it. That crazy son of a bitch did it. I don't know how he did it, because I can never pull something off like that. I don't think a lot of people could pull stuff off like that. But that is why High School DxD is number 3 for me. Is because of the high difficulty, high risk, high reward, and he fucking did it. The show is absolutely fantastic. So, also, if you're going to watch it, which I know none of you are, because you saw harem, you're like, no, I'm good. I'm not going to watch it. If you watch it, don't watch episode 1. Because episode 1, you're like, oh, wow, this is a harem anime. I don't know why harem 1, or episode 1, is so not like the rest of the show. I watched episode 2 by mistake. I don't know what I was doing. I watched it by mistake instead of episode 1. I clicked something, thought I was clicking episode 1, clicked episode 2. And I watched the whole show from season 2, or from episode 2. Don't watch, I'm telling you right now, don't watch, skip episode 1. Now we're at number 2, that silver medal. Now you're probably like, whoa, High School DxD got 3, so I wonder who's gonna get number 2. Listen. Alright, we're done with the controversial picks here. Okay, we're done with that. Okay, number 2 is mainstream. It's one of the big 3. We've already named Dragon Ball. Alright, it was an honorable mention. Didn't cut out my list. And we've already named One Piece. So the last remaining big 3. And number 2 is Naruto. And when I mean Naruto, I'm talking about Naruto Shippuden, and Boruto, because I just mean the series Naruto. Now, why is Naruto number 2 in my opinion? 1, it was the first ever anime I've ever watched. I've been watching that since I was about 12. Naruto is the best shonen, in my opinion. The fights, aside from the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie, I would say, and of course the High School DxD, the fights in season 4. I would say if High School DxD, that fight took 10, and Dragon Ball Super took 1. Number 2 through 8, or number 2 through 9, are all Naruto fights. All of them. Either being from Naruto, Naruto Shippuden, or Boruto. Okay, so let's dissect this show into each segment. So the first segment is Naruto, and Naruto has 220 episodes in total. Naruto is a great starting point for this show. The first arc is the perfect way of explaining what you're getting yourself into. Naruto is, again, it's a shonen anime, but when we meet the first arc and the first bad guy and we defeat him, just saying as a viewer watching the show, as we defeat him, it isn't like, oh, we beat the bad guy, he was bad for no reason, he was just bad for being bad because he was written that way. No, the bad guy had a past. There's a reason what made him bad. And at the end, he redeemed himself. And I absolutely love the fact that all of Naruto is like this. Naruto, for me, has the Batman effect, where, like, Batman's cool and all, but the thing that makes Batman so great are the antagonists, and Naruto has the best antagonist of any anime. Hands down. Okay? Not emotionally attached to Dragon Ball antagonist, or One Piece antagonist, or Fairy Tail antagonist. I'm not super attached. I like them. I'm not attached. I was emotionally attached to almost every single character, good or bad, in Naruto. And that's how great the writing comes down to. Okay? Every fight, every arc in Naruto was absolutely amazing. Next, we have Naruto Shippuden, and Naruto Shippuden had 500 episodes. Lots of filler, but again, that would be one of the things I would change. I would take away all the filler, because I'm not a filler type of person. Wow, and we meet even more great antagonists in Shippuden. Shippuden is the best of the 3 series, by far. My 2 favorite characters of any anime, all of them, my 2 favorite in all of them, are both from Naruto Shippuden. You have Itachi Uchiha and Nagato Uzumaki, aka Pain. Those are my favorite 2. Again, it goes along with the antagonist thing. I love antagonists, and it's because of the show. It's because of Naruto is why I love antagonists in anime, sometimes more than the protagonist. But yeah, the story is absolutely phenomenal in making you emotionally attached to the show. I've cried in Naruto more than any other anime I've ever watched. Because, again, you're so emotionally attached when a character dies. Whether you like him, if he's good or bad. It hits the heartstrings. In Shippuden, what would I change? Obviously, aside from filler. That comes down to dilemma, and I'm just gonna speak about it because Naruto is, again, mainstream, one of the biggest animes of all time. Shippuden at the end with the Kaguya alien thing, and I know because Kishimoto had an ending, and then TV Tokyo was like, no, we need to keep making content because we want to make more money. We'll give you more money. Please don't stop making Naruto. Please don't. We're making so much money. Stop. No. Make it keep going. And then they gave him like $20 fucking billion, and he was like, okay, so what do we gotta do now? He's like, Dragon Ball makes aliens, so let's put aliens in the show. So I'd be fine with the aliens, okay? I'm not saying I'm not fine with it. I'm saying if they introduce the aliens in a different way. If they led up with the aliens, like if you had clues, evidence, stuff through Shippuden and or Naruto of aliens, I would be fine with it. Obviously, that was not the original direction that Kishimoto was going. And I know it had to be abrupt. I'm fine with aliens if they introduced Kaguya in a completely different way. And I would also be fine if they didn't introduce the aliens too. So that's my answer on the Kaguya situation. But was the Kaguya fight amazing? Yes, it fucking was. The fight was no doubt amazing. Boruto. That's the next segment. Boruto is still going on. It has about 158 episodes right now. Boruto is fucking shit. And the only redeeming quality are the fights are fantastic. The story is fucking awful. They either rip off or not rip off, but they either reuse things or like, oh, everybody liked the Akatsuki. They were such a cool group, right? Bad guy group, right? Everybody liked them. We're gonna make a new group called Kara, but they're gonna be like the same exact thing. I hate that. They'll also go back into the past at some point in Boruto, and it's fucking awful. There was more aliens. They explain more alien stuff, sort of, in the show, because now aliens are like involved with Naruto. But only thing I like is that I get to see Naruto wearing the Hokage gear, and he's in his office doing paperwork. I fucking love that, and the fights. Those are the only two things I like about Naruto. I hate all the kids. I hate everything about Boruto, except for those two redeeming qualities. So that is why, with everything good and bad with Naruto, I have to put it at number 2. Have to put it at number 2. But what makes it shy from number 1 is because of those things that I don't like. It's not a perfect anime. Number 1 has to be damn near perfect or perfect. So let's get into number 1. And at number 1, Mahdi. Who's number 1? Who is it gonna be? Well, if you look at multiple Japanese sites over records of asking Japanese people who they thought of number 1, a lot of them say the one that I'm gonna choose. Because in 2015, 18, 16, 19, 17, multiple years, this show in Japan, because I don't fuck with any other, I don't fuck with China's top 10 list, I don't fuck with America's top 10 list. America's is like fucking Pokemon at the top. Come on, America, it's fucking garbage. So I only, for anime, only listen in Japanese. But at number 1, for that gold medalist, that gold medal, is Death Note. Death Note is 1 season long. It has 37, 8, it's not quite 40 episodes, it's like 37, 38, 39 episodes. Yeah, Death Note. Why is Death Note number 1? Oh my god. There is absolutely nothing I would change about the show. This is the most perfect anime I have ever watched. There's nothing I would change. Maybe there's this one little thing in one of the episodes, in the earlier episodes, like the protagonist, I'll explain the whole plot later. He gets ice cream, and it's mint ice cream, but the mint ice cream he gets in the show, in like the design, is very dark green, so it doesn't look like mint ice cream. It looks like a dark green, almost brown, and I don't like that fact. So aside from that, everything else I love about the show. So Death Note is a very interesting plot because the protagonist is the antagonist. You follow the antagonist the whole time, and the antagonist of the show is the protagonist. Yeah, cool little switcheroo, but that's not what makes it number 1. This is hands down the best cat and mouse game story of movies, books, anything I've learned, I've ever witnessed in my fucking life. The show is, it's so brilliantly written. You basically have these, I don't want to spoil anything because I really, over any other anime, I want everybody on the show or everybody on this video who hasn't watched the show to watch the show. And I don't want to spoil so much because I want you to watch however many long episodes it is. It's 30, 38, 39, not long at all. And just the pure brilliance and magic of the show. It's so beautifully written. The show basically had these two characters who are like geniuses, absolute geniuses. And Light Yagami, who is our the character that we follow. I don't want to call him protagonist because he's not. He wants to become a godlike figure when he finds his Death Note, which is dropped into the earth from a Shinigami, which a Shinigami in Japan is basically like a Reaper. And it's a Death Note. The Death Note is, if you write anybody's name in the Death Note, they end up dying. And it falls to this character, Light Yagami. And I love the interaction he has with the Shinigami because he thinks like, oh, do you think I was the chosen one? Because Light Yagami, before he had the Death Note, always talked about he hated how the world was working and how there's many people who shouldn't be around. And he has a child, he's a genius, but he has a very childlike way of thinking of justice. He has a very childlike mindset about justice. He thinks that if you do anything bad, you should just die. And now this Death Note has just fallen into his possession. So now he can do whatever he wants. So he ends up figuring out how the Death Note works. All of that. He ends up meeting the Shinigami, and he thinks that he was chosen for this purpose because he's a very genius and he has this sense of justice. And the Shinigami just laughs and says, I just threw this in Earth. It could have been anybody. I didn't choose you. And he goes on saying like, oh, he loves how like humans think that if they see something unnatural, they think they were chosen when it was just by coincidence. I fucking love that scene. That was an awesome scene. Also, we also meet, because we also think that he's this genius and nobody's going to touch it. There's this detective, the best detective in the world. His name is L. And he ends up figuring out who Light, he tries to figure out, he ends up finding the location area of where the Death Note user is from, Light Yagami. And Light could be anywhere in the world because he's just killing people in the Death Note. Like, there's no traces, you can't figure out where he's at. And this man, L, figured out what country he lived in, what city, and what district he lived in by constructing and figuring out where all of these crimes were being committed. And again, like, this whole show is just this cat and mouse game because Light has to kill L now. But the thing is, we don't know L's name. You have to write the person's name down. You have to know the name of the person. So he doesn't. So L is just the code name, his detective name. So he's trying to figure. So this whole show he's trying to figure out who L's name is, and L's trying to figure out who Light Yagami is, or who Kira, because that's Light Yagami's. So it's L and Kira is trying to figure out who L is, and L is trying to figure out who Kira is. And it's beautifully written, and it's so intelligent. I think it's hands down to the story writer, because it would have to take somebody intelligent to create these scenarios and the story, and it's fantastic. There's nothing I would change about the show. It's absolutely perfect, except for the ice cream bit. But yeah, that's number one, Death Note. So, thank you much, guys, for joining me on my top 30 list. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Yeah, that's my top 30. Maybe you guys will go watch those, maybe not. Maybe you guys disagree, maybe you guys agree. Let me know in the comments. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.